Retirement gives you more time, but it doesn't automatically give you more purpose. If you've ever wondered who you are without your career, whether it's too late to reinvent yourself, or how to find the courage to try something completely new, you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. Today, we're exploring how small, intentional steps can lead to an entirely different life, one that's built around curiosity, growth, and possibility instead of routine. Let's dive in. Everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. I'm your host, Jacquie Doucette. And today we're going to go a little bit off the beaten path, and that's kind of exactly what the point of this episode is. So many of us spend decades doing what we're supposed to do. We build careers, we take on responsibilities, and over time they start to define who we are. But what happens when that structure changes, or if it disappears altogether? My guest today is Norman Calvo, and he's someone who spends a lot of time exploring that exact question. And through his activities, Norman challenges the idea of a default life. He looks at what it means to question assumptions, to step outside the expected path, and to do things more intentionally and instead of just by default. And this is especially relevant to us in retirement because for many people, this stage represents a turning point. Instead of being about what you've been doing, it's about who you want to be next. So hopefully today we're going to talk a little bit about identity, maybe questioning what's normal and what it really looks like to live a life that's aligned rather than automatic. Norman, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks so much, Jacquie, for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to help you out and to tell my story and to help other people who are listening as well to see exactly what their life could be like with a few minor changes. So I'm here for you.
Oh, awesome. Let's start off with a little bit about your background. What led you into what you're doing now? Because you're doing a lot of really interesting things.
Interesting things. Well, thank you. Yes. And it kind of just happened to me. I mean, I've been a mortgage banker now for 44 years, to be honest with you. Full 44 years. Long time. And I owned a very large mortgage company here in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. And when I was just about to turn 60, one of my employees she used to run marathons all over the world. And I was fat. I was overweight. I was, this typical 60-year-old, 59-year-old, 60-year-old, high blood pressure, fat, didn't exercise much, didn't do much. She said, Norman, come on, I'll run it with you. Let's do the Brooklyn Half Marathon. I said to her, you're crazy. You're absolutely what? No. I'll teach you. I'll train you. You'll walk a little bit and then you'll run a little bit, jog a little. Anyway, so when I was 59, almost 60, I ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon with her. And because of that, I lost a little bit of weight. And then my kids said, okay, Dad, how about we go on a hiking trip, which we did, to the Grand Canyon. And little by little, Jacquie, it just started evolving. And I used to get to work at 6 a.m. in the morning. The life of a mortgage banker and a mortgage broker was not easy. I mean, thankfully, I made a lot of money. But over the course of the next couple of years, as I turned into my early 60s, I kept saying to myself, this is a lot of fun doing something slightly different than what I normally did. 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. was my normal hours, 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And so just a little bit by little bit. But what happened specifically was when I was 62, back then, it was the internet stage or phase of our lives, of course. But back then, we still were doing face-to-face mortgage application interviews, face-to-face. So I had these two opera singers who came in and they needed a loan, and husband and wife. And one of the first things they said to me is, Norman, you have such a phenomenal voice. You must be a great singer. And I looked at the wife and I said, Sarah, I got to tell you, I've never sung a note in my entire life. You're nuts, right? So, but she was a little bit not eccentric, but a little bit, beyond the norm, so to speak. And she said, well, okay, if you're not a singer, you must be doing a lot of voiceovers, right? Now, I knew she was a little bit crazy because I worked, and she knew I worked, 12-hour days. I said, no, don't do that at all. Don't do that at all. Anyway, we kept going with the mortgage application. And towards the end of it, she said, I think you'd be a great singer, Norman. Do you want to take singing lessons? Now, I said, all of us singing lessons. So it was fortuitous. Like all of a sudden I'm here, I'm sitting in front of a singing coach. And because my office, or one of my offices, was in Brooklyn, just down the street from the Brooklyn Academy of Music, where she taught, I said, okay, I'll go in my lunch hour. Let me take singing lessons. And so at 62, I started singing lessons. And for the first 6 months, it was torture. I mean, she would play a note, repeat it, la, 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 la. Did not work. And then she said, okay, which note is higher? Which one was lower? I was correct 50% of the time, generally. Right? So, yeah, that makes sense. Higher or lower? Yes or no? I don't know. But anyway, ultimately, it got to the point where I was interested and excited, and I started singing a little bit, totally off key, didn't matter. But one of my realtor associates, whom I did loans for his clients, was in a choir in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, called the Gotham Rock Choir. And he said, Norman, you got to give it a try. He said, what? They're going to accept me? I can't sing, right? Or just started taking singing lessons. Anyway, so it evolved from that. And I joined the choir, had several performances under my belt, then joined a cabaret group. And ultimately that led last year to my own full-length one-man cabaret show in a very, very famous venue here in Times Square. So
Wow.
one of the most exciting, exhilarating experiences of my entire life. And now I'm preparing for my next show. So really a lot of fun.
Wow. Definitely different from being a mortgage broker.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you, Jackie, everybody thought I was nuts. Everybody thought I was my wife, my kids. I didn't tell anybody in my family that I was taking singing lessons for at least the first maybe 9-10 months, because I knew that, here's this conservative, staid mortgage guy, right? I was all business. I mean, totally all business. All of a sudden I'm singing, Moon River and My Way and, all these Broadway songs. What are you doing? They laughed at me. They actually laughed at me. So, because I had to give them a performance. When I first announced it, they said, okay, Dad, sing us a song. Right? So we were at the dinner table and I started singing Moon River, off key, as always. And well, back then anyway. And the only person who didn't laugh was my granddaughter. She was 6 years old at the time. And she said, Grandpa, that is so beautiful. The others were laughing, but she was okay with it.
So what made you decide that maybe, challenging the things that are normal is a good way to go? Like, you had fun doing this, and
yeah. Well, Jackie, I'll tell you, I was always somebody who went against the grain. Almost always. Like I grew up, I'm from Seattle, not that it matters so much, but I grew up in a very, 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 kind of like a mixed neighborhood where the school that I went to was one of the worst schools in Seattle, one of the high schools. And, but at that time, affirmative action was the rage, and it was 1971, 72. And the Ivy League schools were trying to recruit students that had gone to these interracial high schools. And I didn't perform all that well in school, but I said, okay, I'm going to apply. The college counselor said, no, you can't. And I said, well, she said, oh, it's only for disadvantaged people or minorities or things like that. And I said, well, I'm a minority too. I'm Jewish. So, okay, that's a minority in America. So that's great. Anyway, she said, you can't go, but I did. And the recruiter said, Norman, this is for, disadvantaged people or like racial minorities. And I said, well, I'm a minority too. And one of the African American jocks in the room said, way to go, honky boy, you tell him. And so I stayed and I got into Princeton and went to school. So I've always been the kind of person that just goes against the grain. And I can't take no for an answer if it's unreasonable, to me at least. So at the time, but after, to make a long story short, after so many years of being a mortgage banker and being already in my 60s, I said, God, there's got to be more to life than just working. And I had never experienced, physical fitness. I never sang before my entire life. I was never a hiker. I mean, the things that I've done in my 60s, and I'm now 71, people just say, how do you do it? And it's just a matter of taking that one little step, that tiny, tiny step, that first step to do the marathon or the half marathon led me. And now in next month, I'm doing my 12th half marathon. And yeah. And so it keeps on getting better and better and better if you have the courage to take that one little extra step. Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of the listeners can kind of relate to, is that having the courage to take that step. It's hard to do something that's not expected or not expected, but unexpected.
Yeah.
They don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to have everybody saying you're an idiot. How do you get over that?
Well, you kind of never do, but you just kind of let it go. I mean, I have, during COVID, we had, of course you couldn't go to cabaret. So everything was online. And one of the very first auditions that I had for a show was I had to sing Somewhere from West Side Story. And, I still couldn't sing at the time, not well anyway. So I started the audition. I made a video of it and did it twice. And by the third time, all that I said, it was a whole line of expletives of, yeah. It's the funniest video ever. But I got into the show. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But the thing is, even at the performances, when prior to COVID and then afterwards, people might feel that they're going to get embarrassed and they're afraid to go out and do something different. But people around you, your family members and your friends and your business associates, they'll applaud you like crazy. Whether you do it right or whether you do it wrong, they're all there rooting for you. And that's the key, at least to me, to doing something out of the ordinary, because everybody else wants to do it too, but they might be a little bit afraid. So the influence that I have on others is, something worthwhile to me, and they love it and I love it. So it is a hard step, but it can be done. Yeah.
And what do you think? I mentioned, or I talked a little bit in the intro about living intentionally instead of living automatically or by default. How do you think recognizing that default life affects how you make the changes? I don't know if that sentence came out right. How do you figure out when you're really living by default instead of doing what you want to be doing? How do you know?
Well, you can't. I mean, in my case, it was kind of like almost a sense of drifting and almost a sense of being bored with what life I had led up until then. I mean, I had a thriving business and it was exciting. But you know what? If you have, a Snickers bar day after day after day after day after day for years, you kind of get tired of that Snickers bar. You kind of say, enough is enough. And so the decision to kind of go a little bit and make some changes in your life will depend a lot upon your feeling tone of, do you really, really want to continue this way? Or is there something that really excites you a little bit more? Even if it's artificial, even if it's made up. Singing for me was made up. I had never wanted to become a singer. I never wanted to do marathons or be a hiker. And I'm learning how to do a handstand at this point in time. I'm 71 years old and I'm taking handstand lessons because it's like not just fun, it's exhilarating to be out there doing something that you never thought you could. But if you apply yourself regularly and with dedication, you'll be able to do it. So I hope that answered your question, but I know it's a tough one because you have to have that almost purposeful filled desire to do something that's a little bit beyond what you've normally done in the past.
I guess that was going to be my next question. People are going to look at you or listen to this and go, but why? And those are the people, I guess, who are quite happy with their life by default. They're not really looking for something else.
Right, right. And you know what? A lot of times people do have this vague sense of something not being right or of their life being a little bit boring. And they fill it with maybe TV or food or, I don't know, scrolling on YouTube constantly or TikTok or things like that. A lot of people do that. And they kind of have that feeling that something's not right, but they default to what's easy and what's common. But there are those out there that have this nagging, sense in their head that something's not quite right. Let me do something a little bit different, a little bit. And all of the self-help books out there are constantly saying, just make that one step, 1% different. And when that 1% different, if you apply it every single day or consistently, at the end of that first year, you'll be a totally different person.
I was going to say that about the taking small steps. You talked about going and running a marathon. It's like, well, somebody who's never been doing that, you're not just going to go out and say, hey, I'm running a marathon.
Yeah.
You start going for a walk around the block, maybe.
A very slow walk around the block. I mean, I had to, that very first marathon, there's a company here in New York called the Road Runners Association of New York City, right? And so you have to fill out an application form to get a trainer there. And this is what I did when I first ran my first half marathon. And the only training recommendation that they gave me was a 16-week recommendation. Luckily, that was enough time to do the Brooklyn Half Marathon. But it was 16 weeks of training. And I said, okay, I had somebody to do it with, so it worked. But you have to devote yourself to becoming different if you want to have a better life. And that's the key. Really, that's the key. Yeah.
And I guess when you were starting to do these things like the cabaret singing, that sort of thing, did you feel more uncomfortable doing it, or did you feel like you were maybe freeing yourself a little bit when you stepped out there to do stuff?
Totally uncomfortable. Oh my God. I was shaking like crazy. I had my very first solo. I was in the choir that I mentioned to you, but I was like shivering, shaking, sweating bullets, dripping wet. But I finally got enough courage to audition for a solo. Now, the solo was only one sentence of one song. And because it was a big 100-man choir, so the song that they were, giving out for auditions was "Let It Be" by the Beatles. Right now, everybody knows that song, right? Everybody. And so I got the audition for the very first line. When Mother Mary comes to me saying words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. Okay. So the singing teacher, the opera singer that was my teacher at the time, I swear we must have sang those few words 1,000 times. So at the day of the performance, now my whole family was there, business associates were there, everybody was there, and I just froze, and the whole choir was waiting for me. I froze. I had to repeat this first few bars of the measures of the song. Finally, I started singing, and it was totally off key. So bad that the guy who had the next few lines was also off key, and so was the third person. Finally, they
Oh
got
no.
back. Yeah, but here's the thing, Jackie. After the show, everybody congratulated me. Everybody. And I was in seventh heaven. I mean, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. It wasn't until a few years later that I finally looked at the video of that show and realized it didn't dawn on me that I was totally singing incorrectly. I mean, I kind of froze, but okay. But but it doesn't matter if you do it correctly or incorrectly. It doesn't matter if you're running a 20-minute a mile marathon or a 10-minute mile marathon, or it has no bearing. You're enjoying your life and you're producing something for yourself that you'll feel positive about. And that's the key to making an improvement in your life. It really is the greatest thing in the world. Yeah. Yeah.
So I know you have a blog. You've got a few different things. I've seen some of your Instagram videos. Tell us a little bit about what you do for people, how you help people.
Well, I recently, the next step in my evolution, so to speak, is it's been about 5 years that I'm semi-retired, and I'm about to retire as a mortgage banker. I mean, 44 years, come on, that's enough. That's enough. So I got certified as a life coach from he's international, Brendan Burchard high performance coaching certification, very, very international. So I got certified there, and also here in New York with the Flourishing Center. I have both certifications. And so what I like to do is create a forum, especially for men in their 60s, people that are retiring or about to retire, to help them overcome this hesitation or this inability to make improvements in their life. Because what happens is that most people do just fade, and they kind of drift along, taking the same, approach to life that they've always done. It just happens. But if you make it your priority to make your life what you really want it to be, even if it's an artificial decision, I'm going to go be an artist, I'm going to paint, I'm going to sculpt, I'm going to sing, whatever it is, but helping these people create that new life, that improved life, so they're not just drifting, they're excited, they're interested, they're social, and they really go out and meet people and enjoy whatever 20, 30 years that they have left of life. So my blog and my Substack is all about helping people create that new image of themselves, so to speak. And I've done it, and I know that people my age are in need of something like this. So that's what I'm trying to do.
So what would be one question that someone should ask themselves if they're, getting towards that period of life and they're not really sure what's next?
Well, it's an interesting question, because oftentimes people don't stop and ask themselves that. But if I were to, be a coach to somebody who is, just comes to me and says, hey, yeah, I'd like to have some coaching. I don't know where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do, but I'd like to have coaching. I would ask them, well, what really excited you when you were younger? What did you do when you were 10 or 15 or 20? Like, what passions did you have? What interests did you have? And did you have to give that up because of your career and because of, the requirements of raising a family and kids and things like that? What did you give up that you really, really loved? And that's a starting point, because it helps rekindle something that might be dormant still, that they haven't even thought about yet. And it's quite often it's there. Now, some people, they don't remember what passions they had, what interests they had. And for those, you can ask, well, what kind of hobbies do you have now? What do you do that you really love? And that's kind of the stepping stone, is seeing what do they really want to do with their extra free time. They're about to retire or they're just retired. Do you want to play cards for the rest of your life? Is that what you want? You want to watch TV? What do you want to do? And people don't know, but they do have interests. A lot of people do have interests. Yeah.
I've asked that question to a lot of people, and in my practice, the what did you do when you were 10, when you opened the door and went running outside, where did you go? What did you do? A lot of
Yeah.
people can't think back to then for some reason because life has gotten in the way, and they've shoved it so far down that it isn't really on the radar anymore. It makes it hard for them to say, "Oh, I'm interested in whatever," because it's been
Yeah.
so long.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because, in the seventh grade, when you go to junior high school, one of the things in elementary school, you didn't have choirs or anything like that. But in junior high, people are able to take band practice or be in the choir or things like that. So I remember very specifically being in the seventh grade, and in the music room, all the kids were lined up, and the music teacher or the leader at the time wanted everybody to repeat a note. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I couldn't repeat a note, but certainly when I was in seventh grade, my voice maybe was changing or things like that. And I was so disappointed because friends of mine got into the choir and I didn't. Now, I had never thought of that when Sarah initially asked me if I wanted to take singing lessons. But it was later on that I said, oh, yeah, that so disappointed me. I did want to sing. And so you're right. People don't remember so much
Yeah.
what it was that they really loved when they were younger or wanted to do but couldn't. A lot of people couldn't do it because of money. A lot of families never have enough money for music lessons or singing lessons or sports, lessons and things like that. But now maybe when you're in 65, you have the time, you have the money. Well, what are you going to do with it? What are your plans? When we were kids, we made plans all the time. And now you have time to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, 1 week you're going to be a pilot, and the next week you're going to be a doctor, and the third week you're going to be a plumber because dad was fixing the sink.
Yeah.
But for some
Yeah.
reason, all that imagination goes out the window when you grow up and get responsibility, and it's too bad
Absolutely.
that happens. I like to try to get people to throw the responsibility away and just say, what do you want to do? What do
Well,
you want to explore?
one of the exercises that we had when I was taking the Flourishing Center course here in New York, and it was a year course, very intensive. One of the exercises was to take an hour, and it was torture, but we all did it. Take an hour to write down 10 things that we'd want to do in the next 10 years. But describe exactly what we wanted to do. And, that was hard. I mean, I could come up with a couple of things. Yes, I wanted to have a one-man show. I wanted to do this one. But what are the other things that I want to do? I didn't know. But I finally did the exercise and then I improved upon it later on. But that's one of the things that people ought to do that nobody thinks of doing this. But, it's doable if somebody sits down and says, what can I do? Just dream. And even if they can't dream, type into Google or ChatGPT, what do 65-year-old men, what are the interests for 65-year-old men or women? What exciting things can they do for the next 10 years? And they'll come up with amazing ideas. Amazing ideas. Yeah. So,
What do you think about the idea that as you've gone through your work life and you've built up your career and your responsibilities and you've got this identity, what do you think about the idea that as you shut the door on that career, that identity is gone? Do you think it's really gone, or do you think it's just something that has to be tweaked a little bit, maybe?
that's a hard one because, yeah, it is kind of gone and kind of not. I mean, I mentioned that I'm still in the process of retiring. Now, I've been doing that for five full years, and I can't let go. And one of the reasons why I can't let go is that people won't let it go. People
Yeah.
around me won't let it go. My nephew comes to me. He's buying a $3 million house, in New Jersey. Uncle Norman, I can't get a mortgage. Can you help me? Can you help me? Well, yes, of course I can help you. And then friends, what are you doing? You're singing? What? You want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? What? What? No, no, no. And even financial planners. This is one of the biggest problems for retired people or people about to retire is that I've spoken to several financial planners, and oftentimes the advice that's given is, well, if you can just make, 20, 30, $40,000 working part-time, continuing in the job that you still have, why not? It's money that comes in easily. Why not? Why not? And my answer, and finally this year I'm going to, but my wife doesn't want me to retire either. But my answer is, well, it doesn't free you up to really be who you want to be. So yes, it's incredibly difficult to let go of that persona of who you were or who you are. And it's not just because of other people, myself included. I say to myself, am I really a life coach? I mean, 44 years as a mortgage banker, and now I'm a life coach? I mean, I said the same thing about singing, but I had two sold out performances in Manhattan. So I'm not Frank Sinatra, but I can do it. So it's one of the hardest things around. Yeah. To make that transition. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people experience that. I mean, if they don't have something to go to, like you're singing or whatever, the idea of I'm not that anymore. I'm not anything now is a really hard, chasm to jump over and just kind of embrace the I'm not anything right now, which means I can be anything.
Right. So who am I? What am I?
Yeah.
I was a very successful mortgage banker, mortgage broker. I sold my company to a big bank here in New York. But I was somebody special in the mortgage world nationally and was well known. And then, I'm a singer. What? You're not really a singer. You put on a good performance. You had a great show, and it was sold out. But most of the people were your business associates and your family. So you're not a top draw artist here. So am I a singer? Am I a marathoner? Am I I like hiking. Are you a hiker? No, I'm kind of. Those are like incidentals. There's things that fill my life and they're fun, but that's not who I am. So I got to get rid of this mortgage thing and just say, I'm just a regular person. I don't need a label at all. And I don't need a career anymore either. So it's hard. It's very hard. Yeah.
Yep. And that kind of leads into my last question is, do you think your identity is something that you discover or something that you design?
A little bit of both. I got into mortgage banking by just chance. There was an advertisement in the newspaper to, get paid, get this, $1,500 a month for the first 3 months. And then you're on your own on commission, right? This was 1982. So it was a long time ago, but I needed the money, I just needed the money. So I said, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. So that was by chance, but I loved it so much that it continued and grew. And then it was a major decision. Yeah, I'm going to stick with it. But, and singing by chance and running or jogging by chance, it just kind of falls into place somewhat. And the coaching or being a life coach, that was a decision. That was okay. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did, I hiked Grand Half Dome in Yosemite National Park and hiked down to the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon, did all sorts of things, in Iceland, all over the world. And finally, I said, you know what? I could help people discover what it really means to be fully alive. And so that was by choice. Some of the other things were just happenstance. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it sounds kind of like your true identity comes from something that you discover in yourself, but then you kind of forge it through your actions later on. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit of both.
You tweak it. You tweak it as you go forward. You tweak it as you go forward. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes there's turning points in your life as well where you say to yourself, God, I just can't work, 12 hours a day anymore. It's just not what I want to do. And it doesn't fill me up like it used to. And
Yeah.
mortgages used to fill me up. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, but not so much anymore. Yeah, not so much.
So what would you like people to know about you?
Well, what a question. That's great. Well, I'd love them to know that no matter where you are in life, you certainly can make decisions that would be impactful to make a better life. I mean, that's really the key, that you have to, and you can't be afraid of what other people might think, because if you do, you're stymieing yourself, you're limiting yourself, and that's no way to live. So, people think, oh God, he's singing cabaret. Well, who is he? What is he? Okay, but that's okay. That's quite all right. So what I'd like them to know is that just make some personal decisions, have a little bit of courage, go out there and be unique and different and fun. And that's really, really the key. I do think.
And if you had, in addition to that kind of advice, if you had one action for someone to take to start their new life that's aligned with who they might be, what would you say it would be? What would you do? What would they do?
Here's what I would suggest that they do. They take, a couple hours in the afternoon, morning, whenever is best for them, turn off their phone, but still have their computer, their iPad with them, and Google, what exciting, interesting, and innovative things can I do as a 65-year-old or however they old, 68, 60, whatever. What things can I do that would excite me and really help me live a vibrant life? And sit there, look at the answers, review them, see how it fits with who they are. A lot of them will be discarded, but a couple of them might apply. Oh yeah, I could do that. Oh yeah, I could do that. And then start Googling those things that interest you a little bit and see, well, how could you implement that in your life? What could you start doing to make that a pathway to a better life? And that would help a lot of people out there. Just the thought, just the process of taking care of yourself and knowing that you are what you want to be, and you design your life. If you really, really want to have a great life, you design it.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Norman. I'm going to make sure that all the links to your Substack, your Instagram, all that stuff is in the show notes so people can find you, because you've got a lot of really interesting videos. I really like I'm looking for a few good men. That struck home, having been in the military and seen the movie.
Well, Jackie, thank you. I was very, very fortunate. I'm here in New York, and so in Williamsburg, which is I don't remember where you are, but in Williamsburg is a neighborhood in New York. And so they have a theatrical military uniform warehouse there that movie studios go to when they need police uniforms, military uniforms, World War II, World War I. And so I Googled it. I said, oh, where can I find this? I went all the way to university and got that uniform. So it was so much fun. It was a lot of fun doing that. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for being here today. I really enjoyed it, and I think your conversation will spur some thoughts in a lot of people.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jackie. It was a pleasure being here with you. It was so great. Such an easy conversation to speak to you, and it was really a lot of fun. So thank you. I really appreciate being on your show. It was great.
Oh, thanks. And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.